Hey, this is show 90
Wow.
of Toe Business Podcast.
89 more than I ever would have imagined.
Yeah, I'm Jeff. This is Brad for the 90th time. And people are still listening.
Now, 91st, because remember we did the first one and didn't record it.
That's right. The old forgotten mystery tape.
Yeah. Maybe we'll put that out one day.
It might have been taped back then. I don't know. But what's going on up there in Ohio?
We are officially in what we call fake spring right now.
Ooh.
Yeah, the end of February, beginning of March, warms up for about a week. Everybody gets outside, gets a taste of the outdoors. Plants are blooming, and then every child in America, in Ohio, gets sick at the same time, which is what we're going through right now. I got 2 at home. My allergies are on fire, and it's back to being cold. So, we're getting ready for real spring. Get ready, go out and get sunburnt.
Yeah, it's like mid 70s here. I think it got up to 80 yesterday. You never know whether that's going to be like the new thing or not, or if it's going to dip back into cold temperatures. I've had the top off the Jeep for the last couple of days. So that's nice. Other than it has been snowing pollen.
Yeah.
Everything black inside my Jeep is bright green. Outside of everybody gets a new paint job every spring around here.
And we were 70 yesterday and 41 today.
Ooh, God.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I love it here.
Yeah, I bet. Hey, we on the last show we talked about maybe getting maybe 1, 2, 3, whatever people on who are in the middle of going through the startup transition of going beyond 1 truck to 2 trucks, 3 trucks, whatever. I've been contacted by 2 different listeners. The first one, he did it. It sounds like he's on the right track, but he's doing it kind of accompanying a family repair shop business. So I told him, appreciate it. Hold on a minute. I wanted a chance to find somebody that is just a pure startup towing company, you know. I don't know the particulars of the first guy's agreement or situation between the 2 companies, but I just really wanted, if we're going to do this, I really wanted it to be just a standalone startup towing company from nothing. The more I thought about it, I started thinking, well, it's probably good to hear any story if you were able to make those transitions, because towing isn't a repair shop. So I don't know. We're reconsidering that. But I just had another guy reach out to us. I haven't had a chance to respond yet, but it sounds like he is a standalone. So I'll probably contact him in the next couple of days and see what that's like. Just kind of continuing on this how to do a startup, how to get through the growing pains of a startup type of situation.
Yeah, I think maybe sometimes it comes across that we're anti startup, and we're not. I mean, we're very pro business and American dream and all that. Please just think about what you're doing and do it the right way. It's all we're trying to help, really. Yeah. I mean, we're trying to maybe discourage you from doing it if you haven't thought it through, but we're not discouraging anybody from going into business for themselves.
No, not at all. And I had another guy. This kind of gets into another situation. The guy contacts me and says, "Hey, me and a friend I'm in the tow business. Me and my friend are thinking of starting a podcast. Would you mind spending some time on the phone with me? I've just got a lot of questions." And then he says, hey, just so you know, it won't be about towing, so don't worry about talking to me, because it's not going to be competition. We like that too. I mean, if let's say Brad and May talked about startup companies, and then you had the guys, those guys with a Tow Life out of Canada, they talked about startups. We're both going to approach it in a totally different way. I mean, you get good information out of both of them, and both shows, I believe, are here to, try and get good information out to towers. So even if we did the exact same subject, there's still going to be something different in each one. So we're not against that either. So any other podcasts out there, either doing towing or a tower trying to do another podcast, we don't mind talking to you. So reach out. I mean, I'm not going to be a free consultant, but I'll give you the basics and start you down the right direction. I just did something similar with a guy up in Maine. Just kind of shot him all the links to the good software and everything that's good to start out with inexpensively, and move on from there. So yeah, we don't mind, man. We're here to help and get information out there. So never hesitate to reach out. We're good with all that.
Yeah, I mean, seems like a new towing podcast pop up, every couple months here. So inevitably we're all going to discuss the same topic at some point. There's only so many rabbit holes to go down in this industry, and we do try to keep everything pertaining to the towing industry. We get off topic a little bit every now and then, but we try to keep it relevant, informative, and helpful. But yeah, I mean, inevitably we're all going to touch on the same thing, and even on this show, we've already done it. We've talked about the same thing multiple times. Yeah. Some it's important, some because we forgot stuff the first time, or some new information has come up on the topic or whatever.
That I don't know if you meant to do that or not, but that's one hell of a segue into today's show.
I did not. I don't even know what we're talking about.
We've got a returning guest, but there's been some changes in what they do or how they do it. As far as helping towers collect on these truck wrecks. So he's a past guest, but he's with a different organization now, and I've had several conversations with him over the last few weeks, and I think he's got some good information to share with us. So we'll be right back. Hey, we are back. Our guest on this show, he's been with us once before, but there's been a lot happening in the world of collecting recovery bills since he was last on. So, Jamie, why don't you let everybody know who you are, who you're with, and what you can help us do.
All right, perfect. So my name's Jamie Rhines. I work with the company Tucker Albin. We represent, I believe, around 100 tow companies at this moment in time, in getting invoices paid on recoveries that are underinsured, insurance denials, or flat out the driver. We've seen even to the driver isn't authorized to operate, so nobody's paying the bill. I got into this, as you know, from my first podcast. I actually was the bad guy, did third-party work, calling tow companies and telling them that their bill was outrageous to try to get it reduced for a fee of my own. That rate was 25%. I'm 100% honest with what I've done and where I've gone. But there became a point in time where companies were asking me to tell the tow company they had a cap limit when they didn't, or to say, hey, can you get $20,000 for this $100,000 invoice? And I wouldn't do it. The company that I worked for at the time would not do that as well, because they believed in integrity. And during that time frame, I actually leaned on Jeff and some other people to get an understanding of the tow industry and how much the profit margins have decreased through time because of some of the insurance practices. And I switched to working with tow companies to ensure that they're getting paid for the work that they do.
So there's unfortunately there's a need for you these days. I guess there's always been, and don't take that the wrong way. You know what I'm saying? It stinks that we work our tails off, and then that work's difficult enough. But moving forward, we have to put 10 times that amount of work into just getting paid for what we already did. And us as towers, I'm not going to say there aren't there's some bad players out there. All right. They're taking advantage of things. They're opportunists. They're charging as much as they possibly can. we get it. There's a few of those, but that is not the majority of towers. And the fact that the people doing things right are having to enter into these fights and go years in litigation in some cases to get paid, when there are active insurance policies covering these loads and these trucks and all the stuff, it's just awful. We're having to do this, and then we have to put in all this extra time and money, and then when the rates go up again, the fleet owners and the insurance companies, they have a heart attack. What, you went up again? Well, yeah, well, I mean, you remember those last year that you never paid me for? Yeah, that's where we're at now. So I mean, so with that said, like, can you start us off? We get that call from Georgia State Patrol that says, respond to this tractor trailer. It's half hanging over a bridge, a big catastrophe in the middle of the interstate. When you get that phone call, what do you need to do as far as best practices? What mindset do you have to have moving forward, documenting what you did, things like that? Can you kind of get the ball rolling on what we should be doing right from the start?
Yes, sir. And I'm probably going to tell you things that you guys have already heard time and time again, but they have to be approached as if it's going to go to suit, as if you're not going to get paid, and as if it is going to be that 3-year battle that nobody wants to deal with. And it's an unfortunate side effect. I look at it like this, and I think I'd mentioned it in the previous show, but tow companies in that industry is really the only emergency service industry where you have an insurance company that is trying to tell you what you can charge and how much money you're allowed to make as a business owner. I don't see insurance companies talking to Eli Lilly about the fact that they charge a 3,800% upcharge on insulin, and I go pay my $10 copay and they have to cover it. As a matter of fact, they lobby against free healthcare. So this industry, if I really kind of have a pulse on it, I've been in the, for about 7 years now, but it feels like this is the true last free market. This is family owned, it's generations. They can't have a big corporation come in like Walmart, and as a mom and pop shop, you're forced to charge prices right along what they are, right? Because it's influencing how you make a profit and whether you can keep your doors open. So in my thought process, this is the battle between insurance companies not wanting families to be able to make money. They want it on their terms, they want it at their rate, and they're going to try to bully any and every tow company that's going to listen to them. So the most important thing when you're going on a wreck is going to be the bill of lading. I know pictures are important. I know establishing timelines, video, whatever additional information that you can gather. But there's one fact that the insurance company is not going to tell you if it does go to suit, is they had an opportunity to have a third party adjuster on that scene and verify all the information for you. But I think that they found through time that if somebody says, yes, they were out there, that equipment was there, the timeline's correct, how does the insurance company maneuver out of the bill? How does the insurance company call a third party to get it reduced if they have a capable person there that can solidify all the work that you guys did? So the insurance industry as a whole kind of works in gray areas, right? It's how do we pinch a penny here? How do we pinch a penny there? Adjusters are getting paid based on how little that they pay out. That's what their job is.
So is this by design, them no longer sending these insurance
Abs-
adjusters out?
absolutely correct. Why would they send the adjuster out? I apologize. I gotta turn off my phone real quick. But yeah, why would they send a third party out there and justify your charges? So they found out that it's easier to get wiggle room, to get a tow company to do what they want, to offer money up front real quick, and get the price point that they're looking for, or at least better than what the tow company's charges are. If they don't establish the fact that the tow company did everything that they said they were going to do. And as a desk jockey is what I like to call them, it's real easy for me to look at a circumstance and say, oh, well, it shouldn't have taken that long. It shouldn't have, and you cannot start to put doubt in the eyes of the tow company or whoever's dealing with the insurance adjuster if you have somebody on your shoulder saying, hey, everything that they did was legit.
So yeah, there was one insurance company in Metro Atlanta, actually much larger. They'd cover an area much larger than Metro Atlanta, and two trucking companies, large national companies we work with. We used to not be able to do a thing for either of those three without that third party adjuster showing up, taking photos and everything. And I'd powwow with them on the side of the road. I'd give them unit numbers, what time they got there, everything, nail it down. And those were the fastest paid bills we had.
Yeah.
I loved it. I for years I've heard towers saying, "Oh my God, I hate it when those guys show up." No, absolutely not, man. Take advantage of it. Leave the scene with everything already decided on and agreed upon. You write the bill, it matches what his notes are, it's paid. That's why I
Yes,
asked
sir.
by design that they've stopped doing that for the most
Yeah,
part.
you figure, then I can't mention the name of the company, but one of our largest companies, and I think they're top 5 in the world as far as insurance, they pay $4 billion a month in claims. So you can imagine you knock off 10,000 here, you knock off 20,000 there, what that does to their bottom line. So that is specific to the industry. And then they also added the third party, right? The job that I used to do where I go in and I try to create more doubt. And I can tell you when I did it and I hear it now, obviously we're managing a lot of claims with my current company. And every time somebody from a third party calls, the first thing they say is that tow bill's outrageous. Then they get off the phone and they tell this next tow company the same exact thing. Right. So it's all about creating doubt in your work. And it's a shame because, like I said, as emergency management, you wouldn't feel that way. And I understand there are tow companies that overcharge, but I also understand that my tow clients, like the other day, was in scuba gear fishing a truck out of the lake over a DUI incident the night before. That's the owner of the company. They're not in the Bahamas. They're not employing people because they're making such a large profit margin. So the doubt and everything that they're trying to create doesn't match the actuality of what's going on, because I've never known business owners that are making money hand over fist, that are going out putting their lives in jeopardy. They're doing the work. They're ensuring that this cargo is intact, or tanker truck that's breached doesn't rupture, and you don't get a thank you for all the work that you do that saves the cargo load, or you pump a fuel tank and it saves them 30 grand because they don't have an environmental mess on their hands. You get your tow bills outrageous.
Nope. So we actually posted something on the tow business page yesterday, and it's from Oklahoma Wrecker Owners Association. And it appears that OHP, Highway Patrol, is now wanting to collect $25 out of each tow from the tower, out of their bill. Now, it doesn't look like this is an additional. They just want to be paid 25 out of the bill, because I mean, obviously we're all being paid in boatloads of cash every day from these insurance companies. So we got an extra 25 per call to throw their way. We don't need it. But the graphic they put out with this post is interesting, and it's very truthful. Oklahoma wrecker operators are the only state first responders not getting paid. 30 to 50% of government requested tows go unpaid. And those are the same numbers here in Atlanta. That 30 to 50%, it's right in line with what we're doing here. And these guys are out in Oklahoma. So this is obviously a nationwide problem.
And Oklahoma, by the way, has some of the tightest restrictions on tow companies. I don't know how a tow company makes money without bringing additional equipment. Last time I checked, and I'd have to look into it again, but I think that their rates are $750 for a rotator. Operational costs don't allow you to operate something that's newer than 1975 at that type of rate per hour. I mean, it's a shame that the tow companies have the brunt of the burden when they found out tow companies were actually making a profit. Then you saw all the industries that supply tow companies with the equipment they need raise the prices on the equipment. And then people started complaining about the tow bills, and then states started to try to monitor or regulate the amount of money that a tow company can make. And so it's been this big revolving door, but it's always the tow company that's making the sacrifices, and you guys are the ones that are on call 24/7 dealing with these emergency situations. And it doesn't seem like there's an appreciation for the state who you do the work for, or from the insurance companies or trucking companies that you're helping. And you know, there's a lot of different examples of how that works, but I can tell you from how the insurance companies moved along with the manufacturers of, let's say, tow trucks or tow equipment, and securing their profit margin as they started to put cap limits on the tow and recovery side. And based on their premium, they know what their profit is, right? The insurance companies never doing anything that they're not getting paid for. Obviously, the equipment people are not doing anything they're not getting paid for. The state, the benefit to what you guys do for the state, believe it or not, average recovery after 2 hours, you have about a 30% of a secondary incident. After 4 hours, that moves up to 50. And believe it or not, at 6 hours, there's an 80% chance that there's going to be another accident involved. So states have moved from allowing you to do your work, maybe take time to recover the cargo differently, to saying you need to get the roadway cleared because they're trying to benefit from it. And that's also something that increases what you guys have to charge, right? Because the state's not worried about you mitigating the loss for the insurance company, and the insurance companies mitigated their loss by capping the policy. So it's really not a win-win situation, and you're talking about generations of family and industry that really doesn't have large corporate entities that are controlling the price. And it's a shame that it might be the last free market that these companies are allowed to squeeze out.
The what why does it differ so much from one insurance company to the other, like how they handle things, right? We've got ones. If I hear certain insurance companies cover a wreck, I know I'm good. I know they're going to make the right decision. They're going to have intelligent conversations. Yeah, they might try to haggle over a couple little items, but no big deal. I know, within the next 2-3 weeks, I'm going to get paid most likely the entire bill, if not just a couple little trims here and there. And then you go to the next guy and they're just, nope, we're not paying it. Nope, we're not paying it. I mean, is this not where like insurance commissioners should be stepping in and kind of saying, no, y'all have to operate the same?
Yeah, I believe insurance commissioners, unfortunately not, unfortunately enough, the FMSCA doesn't do their job. You can file a complaint. That complaint, if the insurance company is acting improperly, would establish, I think it's $1,100 a day fine until they do work with you and get it paid. But none of those things are actually taken to heart. You don't get somebody that gets the claim and does the work. And multiple state insurance commissions that we file complaints with, they're just not interested in enforcing those type of laws. And this is all due to the other industry that was actually a free market, and that's owner operators driving tractor trailers. And probably about 8 years ago, they squeezed them to a point where now they don't make money. There's industry rates that don't allow an owner operator to make the same kind of money they could 8 years ago. They're, hot shots, whatever it may be, giant corporations jumped in. They started to control the trucking industry. And so the differences in insurance really are owner operators trying to make a living and being sold a premium that they don't understand has them liable if they ever get into an accident.
We've run into several cases where insurance, they claim that $5,000 tow policy limit, and then the truck owner, you almost 100% of the time, owner operator, they come in and they're like, they're trying to give us this $5,000 check. And they're like, well, what's this for? Well, that's what my insurance company's paying. They think they have no understanding that that means they're on the hook for the rest of it. I mean, they own the truck, right? And they're like, oh, well, my insurance company just told me this is all they pay, so this is what you get paid. You know, they're being flamboozled by their insurance company just as much as they're trying to do it to us.
Yeah, and it's about dollars and cents, right? I mean, as a business owner, just like tow owners, you're trying to make a profit. It doesn't make sense to be in business to lose money. And just like the tow industry, truck drivers own and operate their own business. They're the ones doing the work. So when you get offered a premium that allows you to make more money, you're going to gravitate towards making more money. And a lot of people don't understand the concept of liability. They don't, insurance companies aren't forced to let them know what the average recovery cost is. I mean, that might prevent 80% of what you deal with. If an insurance company had to make their client aware, you have $10,000 worth of policy limits. The average recovery in America is about $35,000. And if that's if it's not too complicated. If they had to say that, then truck drivers have to understand if they get into that incident, they should have $25,000 set aside to pay it. And they don't understand. And it's like you said, when we make phone calls to truck drivers and their insurance companies pay the cap limits, they think the state's going to pick it up because they called you guys out, or
Yep.
hey, my insurance is done with it. That's it. That's all you guys get, right? There's no understanding of their own culpability in the incident.
In those two cases, yeah, they almost every time they either think that what ultimately gets paid is dictated by their policy limit, or they think, well, the state paid for this. State pays for this. State called you out there. I didn't call you. Why do I have to pay this? You know, and I mean, it sounds funny to us because we're in this world every day. But some guy that just went out and bought his own truck, they have no understanding, and I think it's it's very frustrating knowing that they're pretty much being taken advantage of by their insurance company just as much as we are.
Yep. And then more often than not, tow owners feel bad for them, right? They're a business owner like you are. They'll take a really small thing and you know, say, okay, we're good. We're not going to pursue it. Or there's just not an opportunity. I mean, owner operators are not flush with cash. So unless they're, you know, a larger operation, you're not going to have any recourse in getting the remaining balance taken care of.
So, you know, it does put us into a, you know, a lot of people want to paint us as greedy tow company owners. It's not the case, man. We've got hearts, right?
Right.
We understand. And like you have one of these guys come through your door and you want to talk to him about getting this bill paid, you know, within the first 5 sentences, you can figure out that this guy probably doesn't have shit.
No.
Nothing. And probably living out of his truck, might not even have a house or an apartment anywhere, just lives out of his truck. He has no understanding of how this stuff works. And what are you going to do? I mean, a lot of us want to pound our chests and say, I don't care. He owes that damn money. I'm going after it. Can you feel good about ruining a guy's life and taking everything he owns, or tying him up in court for years? I mean, you have to do it to a degree, but if you're a decent person, you also got to let some of them slip, and that sucks.
So
That's-
the good news, and this is where I was going with liability and chain of custody, and it kind of leads me right into that topic. More often than not, your larger bills are going to entail cargo. Okay, so when you get to an incident, the first thing that I'm asking for is the bill of lading. That bill of lading is a chain of custody. It allows you to have more parties involved to be able to get the invoice resolved if they're uninsured or improperly insured. Most people, shippers, tow companies, even attorneys, don't understand the fact that you have Title 49, which is the federal regulations that all trucking companies operate under, and the FMCSA that sets the guidelines for the DOT authority that you operate under. And believe it or not, the shipper has a legal obligation to vet their carrier or the logistics company that they're using to ensure that they have proper insurance, their safety record is good, and 90% of anything that you ever do that you don't get paid for, one or two of those things are incorrect. And that means that they didn't do the proper vetting. And the other thing is if it was a double brokered situation, which I think every tow company on the planet has dealt with, and you're guaranteed not to get paid because no insurance company pays on a double brokered load. Well, that means that somebody picked that shipment up from a warehouse and the warehouse didn't properly check the chain of custody, and they let a carrier that was illegal drive off with their shipment. And so that puts culpability and liability in the hands of the shipper, the logistics company, the end user. They're all part of the people and the reason why that carrier was hired. And even if it's a logistics company that did the wrong thing and gave that shipment to another logistics company, the ultimate responsibility is going to lie in the hands of the shipper. So that's one of the most important things you can do, because if you're going out, and I'll say this, right? If tow companies were greedy, would you ever go out on a fatality incident?
No.
You're not going to get paid. And if you do, it's 3 years down the road, right? Car runs into a semi truck. He's got $50,000 worth of insurance company at best. And you're going out to a gruesome scene that nobody wants to be a part of. It's probably going to take, 3-4 times what a normal recovery would take. And you do that knowing odds are you're not going to get paid. So I think that people don't give tow companies the respect that they're due. There, multiple scenarios. Like I said, I had a client that went scuba diving to get a truck out of a lake. That's a personal vehicle. There's no way that personal vehicle owners coverage is going to take care of that. They do it because they believe in the work. So when you guys take as much your work as seriously as you do, and then you're paying the price because somebody allowed a shipment to leave in the hands of the wrong carrier, that shouldn't be your loss. And so that bill of lading is a good key. Whether you're able to do all the contacting of the individuals yourself, or you use a service like ours where we have experience in dealing with the attorneys that are going to tell you that it's a frivolous lawsuit, and they don't have liability or culpability. It was the carrier, and you take that argument head on, and you just can be honest with them. Any attorney, if you have a bill of lading, they're naming all parties on that bill of lading. Point blank period, and you will get paid. It happens with a lot of the large corporations. So if you start to get tuned with it on your own, or like I said, you have somebody that you trust, that's a means to get paid. And the other thing that a lot of people don't know, and some companies are even refusing to do the recovery if they don't have the bill of lading, is that it is a chain of custody. The driver legally has to have it in his possession. There should never be a situation where you guys go out and do a recovery where there's cargo and there's not a bill of lading with that cargo.
What if
And
it's
so,
what if it's like a fire or, you know?
well, in that situation, right then and there, I'm asking the driver where they picked up in front of the officer, let the officer know we don't have a bill of lading. That's the legal chain of custody, who contracted them, where they picked up at, and who they picked up for. So I'll give you, for instance, we resolved one. It was a burnt transit van. They were doing work for a nonprofit that deals with blood donations. We were able to track through that VIN number. We got in touch with the driver. They were kind enough to actually let us know where they picked up. We worked that way back, found out the insurance company paid them for their lost cargo. Believe it or not, they used the police report of the fire to, what do you call it? To verify that the cargo had been a total loss, and they paid the nonprofit agency, but they chose not to look at the, sorry about that. They chose not to look at the police report and see that there was a recovery in a company that had done the work on that report. So it's about a 2.5-year-old, probably the tow company thought, dead case. And we were able to get it resolved because the insurance company accepted liability by paying out the cargo portion of the claim. And at that point, they didn't have any wiggle room in having to pay us.
Is there anything that says, okay, we had this terrible wreck? Is there anything that lays out the order in which people are to be paid? Because every policy has a limit.
Right.
They just pay whoever, there's no, this person is supposed to be paid first. They're first in line, blah, blah, on down the line. There's nothing like that.
No, well, what an insurance company is going to do if you're talking about like smaller cap limits, like a personal vehicle, Progressive, Geico, Farm Bureau, they're going to wait, and that's why fatalities take so long. They're going to wait till every claim comes in, and then they're going to proportion it equally by the amount that is owed and the amount of the cap limit. So once again, the largest bill outside of the lawsuits, if there's an at-fault party and the loved ones that lost somebody, outside of that, the tow company is the biggest portion of that, or equipment damage. If you got a couple $1,000,000 in claims and $50,000 worth of a payout, everybody down that whole chain is leaving with pennies on the dollar. But as a tow company, you have to understand too that at-fault argument does not work with a personal vehicle that hits a tractor trailer, right? Because the insurance company knows that their cap limit is going to be paid, and they would be responsible for the remaining balance of anything that the personal vehicle doesn't. So a lot of people don't understand that. They're going to argue with you because it goes back to the working in the gray areas. They get a few people here or there that don't pursue it any further. Well, that's just money saved on the back end, and an adjuster's performance is evaluated by how little money they pay out for the claims that they got in on a monthly basis.
Almost sounds like how bankruptcy works, right?
Yeah.
This person, they've got a 10,000 in assets still at the closing of the company or the filing of the bankruptcy, and whoever's owed, everybody involved gets to divvy up those pennies.
Yep.
Sounds very.
Yeah, it's exactly the same as a bankruptcy. But like I said, you have to stay on top of the fact that there is probably a commercial policy and there's a liability portion of that. And that BIPD portion is $1 million surety bond against any and all things that happen above and beyond, right? So you have to learn to be able to talk to these people. The difference between towing and recovery, if you can convince them that what you did was a recovery, that immediately wipes out that $5,000 cap or the $10,000 cap, right? Because it's all about language in their underwriting. So if you become proficient in what your argument is, and you stand tall on what your belief is and what you did, then they'll go back, they'll review the underwriting, they'll find more money in the policy.
So when what is your first step? I mean, I know ultimately you're there to provide this service, but like if you are just starting out trying to collect a bill, you're trying it on your own, and you get like almost right off the bat a denial, or hey, we'll give you $5,000 on a $37,000. I mean, what should your response be? What do you do next? Is there any way to fight that yourself? Is it
Yeah,
trying to fight yourself?
well, that kind of depends on the individual, right? I think that a lot of our clients use us just because they've been doing it 15, 20 years. They're even tired of talking to people. So, they'll have us do the work, and it makes sense for them. But if I were just doing it starting off, I'm making the call to the insured, and I'm trying to stay on a good level of communication with them. Because believe it or not, the insured, if you're working with the insured, then you have a better opportunity to get paid. If the insured goes silent, or they think that you're going after them for money and they don't want to talk to you, then you lose opportunities, because if the insurance company denies it, how often do they send you what they denied it for? They're going to send that to their insured, and they're going to hope that their insured doesn't speak with you because they have this big, large bill. And there's an opportunity to change that denial. Like I said, they if they deny a hazmat bill because the driver's uninsured, that's not a legitimate reason to deny a hazmat bill. If the person had or the carrier had a policy that was active, and you do a hazmat cleanup, then that policy has to pay. There's no reason to deny it. It doesn't matter, uninsured driver, a raccoon went in and drove the truck. Like, all of that stuff is obsolete, because that liability policy's there to protect the public, and a hazmat bill is a public safety issue. And
And doesn't that policy kind of cover anything operating under their DOT number?
it should.
Right. So like I was told by the reason we have the MCS 90 and all that stuff is so it covers, okay, you got some guy, insures he insures 5 of his trucks under this commercial policy that falls under all the FMCSA stuff, all that good stuff. But then he's got like 2 crappy local trucks that he just keeps, and he's got those insured under State Farm still or something, right? My insurance agent explained to me, well, no, actually, when a commercial policy agrees to cover that company and those trucks under that DOT number, whether somebody forgot to put a truck on or forgot to take a truck off the policy, really that policy covers that DOT number.
It does. And let me cover that. You brought up a little something interesting. So let's talk about just a little bit of how they nickel and dime you guys. When multiple insurance companies agree to insure a carrier, that is their agreement. There's federal legislation that allows them to subrogate between themselves. So under no circumstance is there any reason for an insurance agency to ask you what portion was what, and what time you spent on what, and how that bill would break down for what. What they're actually trying to do is prevent themselves from losing money on the back end, because the 2 companies might meet together, and between all the carriers that they have insurance coverage with together, they're going to say, I owe you 10 million, I have you owing me 15 million, and they negotiate, and both company feels burnt at the end. So they'd rather put you in a position where you're negotiating for them and you're doing their work for them. So yeah, the BIPD policy is supposed to cover everything. It's actually supposed to cover even if you have cap limits on an insurance policy. It just doesn't happen that way. And you have the situation in Virginia where an insurance company accidentally allowed a lawsuit to get a court opinion. And in Virginia now, any coverage that is insufficient automatically gets paid by the liability, and it's created this whole ripple, right? There's, I think, a lawsuit in Texas where they're trying to do the same thing. So they're trying to establish these rights, with regards to the liability policy. And I can see if I can get that information for you guys, so you can post it on your webpage as far as Virginia is concerned.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, good. I'll
Okay.
stop writing.
Yeah. So, and I can try to find the case so that you guys have that for yourselves. But yeah, that's the big smoking gun, right? I mean, everybody has $1 million policy, but they only seem to have $5,000 to pay when a tow company gets involved. How is that possible?
Yeah. I mean, we were fortunate. We're litigating one, and about 6 months ago, the insurance company came in claiming they had that $5,000 limit, and the judge was like, "You've got to be kidding me." Familiar enough with this stuff. He's like, "No, you need to go back to the drawing board. We ain't playing that in my court." So if we can get a bunch more judges like that, we might be good. But it's terrible that it even had to go in front of a
To
judge.
the judge, and they play that market too, because they'll sue a bunch of people to try to make a stand, or what people feel like is a stand. Like, your bill's outrageous per pound. I hear everything, right? Per pound, admin fee, like, but whatever way a tow company's billing is so they can profit. Everybody should be allowed to profit when you're doing something. I never see anything that's just absolutely, out of this world crazy. And they'll challenge it, but when it comes down to actually allowing a court to rule on it, we have, I think, 3 in federal court right now with the per pound. They will, I guarantee it, they will settle those out. What happens if the court says yes, it's a valid charge? Tow companies are free commerce. They're allowed to make their money, and the per weight and the admin fee and the fuel surcharge, those are legitimate charges. Now what happens?
Yeah, precedent.
They've set precedent across the entire country. They're not gonna take the risk. They're not gonna be the one insurance agency that accidentally allowed tow companies to have a nice profit margin. Just won't happen. So it's just about tying it up, hoping the tow company is going to bend or break, hoping that they can establish something, because some of the larger tow companies, maybe they do 30, 40 claims with them a year. And if they can get the tow company to say, all right, we'll just settle it out, well, then the next time they hit you, they're going to say, all right, well, we don't believe in that per weight charge that you do. What are you going to do for me on this one?
So
I think I know how you'll answer this, but what's your advice on this situation we all face? Almost every wreck, you got insurance company on the truck, insurance company on the trailer, insurance company on the cargo, maybe a broker in there with insurance, and the old, what's my part of the bill? I got to get this load of auto parts to the factory. Well, what's my part of the bill so I can get the cargo out? Which I think I know your stance, but walk us through that.
So I just tell them that's not my job. So here's a funny thing, because with subrogation, and it's the same thing when an individual, or, like, let's say, one of the larger companies that moves packages around, and they need something because it's an overnight deal, and they're going to say, hey, can we, like, what would it take to have you recover our cargo, get it on a trailer, and get it on the road so that we can make this shipment? It's not my job. You pay the bill, you can get reimbursed by the insurance company, right? The carrier. And we get into this argument all the time when we're handling these things, because we do first party billing for some of our tow clients, and they'll be like, oh, well, you gotta you got to be able to take care of this for me. You know, they're getting on me about the cargo, and I'll tell them flat out, like, if you trust your insurance company enough, cut my client a check and get reimbursed by them. Do you want to see somebody squirm real quick? I mean, they don't trust their insurance company. They're not going to take that, and other insurance companies are not either, because they do have an opportunity if they need, you know, something expedited, just to pay the bill and subrogate it with the other policy holders at the end of the year, which they do every single year. So they're not going to do that because they don't want to incur those type of losses.
Can you speak to some of the myths regarding MCS 90? Because
Oh yeah, so
and I'm gonna say why. Like every once in a while, you see someone post an article or something on Facebook or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, well, I found out about this MCS 90 thing, and it's the magic bullet." And man, if they won't pay the bill, I'm just gonna go and take the money from their. And like, I've never had it happen that smoothly. I mean,
no, and the MCS 90, I hate to drop another some more bad news on tow owners, but that is for the insurance company. That MCS 90, because if I'm in business with you and you pay money to me to insure you, I'm not legally allowed to go back after you for money. The MCS 90 allows them to do that. I mean, I've never seen any real function outside of that. I mean, I've seen lawsuits, I've seen, right? But the MCS 90 is really just an argument that the insurance company can pay you and then go back to their client and get that money from them. But they're not going to do that with an owner operator that they know doesn't have any money, right? So
so you heard it here first, kids. It's not the magic bullet.
it really isn't. And
We all want to find one, but
the the magic bullet is like I said, it's getting the bill of lading. It's understanding that the trucking company and the insurance isn't your only route to get paid. It's if they don't have the bill of lading and they have cargo, getting the information that you need from the individual driving. You know, if it's not a burnt vehicle and they don't have the bill of lading just because they don't have it, asking the officer on the scene to cite them. That's a ticketable offense. You have it on record, right? You're establishing everything that you need in case you don't get paid and it has to get sued. And you, like I said, you can use that information, you can apply the pressure. You have companies like, you know, when you're talking about the TPAs, the alcohol beverage industry. I mean, 10 years ago, you had to count every can of beer on the side of the road with somebody from the ATF. They don't do that anymore. You know what I mean? So you used to be protected kind of in the own actions of the insurance companies trying to check in and make sure you're doing the work properly. But like I said, they realized, well, there's no money in that. If they're doing it properly, then I actually have to pay the whole bill. So they're putting that onus on the tow company. And you might think, you know, taking the pictures, showing the different aspects of what you're doing. So if they, you know, want you to break it down, that's the way to go to get paid. But it's really a different direction. It's establishing other options through the information that you can glean in that recovery, so that if the trucking company and the insurance company don't pay, then I'm going after Anheuser-Busch. I'm going after a Ford Motor Company, right? Uh, here's this is one that really burns me. Any company that employs a Canadian trucking company, they're liable right then and there. Canadian companies have $10,000 worth of insurance. They're allowed that's their recovery limit, period. Right? You might have some people that take the extra insurance, but there's no argument. They have to pay the hazmat recovery. They don't have to have anything outside of $10,000. So anytime that a shipper employs a Canadian company, and they don't do that because they want to, give our friends from the North business, they do that because usually they have operations in both countries, and it allows them to move freight cheaper. Well, they've made that decision. You didn't make that decision. And so it's an interesting thing, right? How many people have dealt with a Canadian company? They aren't paying the whole tow bill. It's just not how it works. And you don't have to absorb that loss, because like I said, if you take down the information of where that shipment was picked up and who it was for, then you can press them, because they knew getting into that relationship that their carrier could not possibly pay for an entire recovery.
Yeah, but now there are some places in Canada where if a recovery bill is not paid, the province will step in and cover some of it, and then they turn around and go after the trucking company. I mean, how does that all play in, or is that too far north for you?
Yeah, I haven't. I mean, if you're talking about maybe a tow in Canada, yeah, so their requirements, and just like I think our requirements, if it's a company from the US driving in Canada, are different in their own country than they are in ours.
So one really odd thing I've run into is we did an aircraft recovery on a 20-seat Falcon jet, and not only did we have to hire a Spanish translator to get the bill paid for us, because we were totally lost. Um, it turns out that the way their insurance worked, and I don't know if this is on trucks too, but as far as on the aircraft goes, the airline has to be able to pay the recovery bill up front, and then they get reimbursed by the carrier. You ever heard? Have you run into
I
anything like that? And that was bizarre. And sure enough, our check was from the airline. So
That's it. That's interesting. I haven't run into that. The only aircraft the recovery that I ran into, they were trying to tell the tow company that $20,000 to remove an aircraft that had landed on the I-15 in San Diego was too much money, and they called some specialty company that removes the wings, and they would do it for 9,000, and we're like, that uh isn't an incident in the middle of San Diego freeway, and they're a company like 4 hours away. I don't think Highway Patrol is going to allow you to take a company from outside of LA down to San Diego. So that was the only familiarity with it that I have, and the judge demolished them because they're trying to compare apples and oranges. And that's another thing too that I think tow owners have to just kind of let go. It doesn't matter what you're charging in your state and what other tow companies are charging in their state. I'm not comparing anything, right? Your state has standards. Every state requires different equipment to be on the rotation list. Every state requires different things. Like, some states require that the equipment all be moved off the road before you even begin the recovery. Some states allow you to do the recovery at the same time that you're removing the equipment off the road. So you need to just believe in the state that you're working, understand that if you're charging similar to the other tow companies around you, right, you're setting precedent for prices. And I'm not taking any information from somebody that tells me they had a tow in Timbuktu that they paid $15,000 for.
we get that one a lot too. Well, the last time I turned my truck over and tumbled down 100-foot embankment, it only cost me this. What?
You know what? We were arguing one the other day, and this is I mean, I don't go out and work, but the layover was on pavement, and I swear to God, there was not an ounce of light that you could see on the trailer, between the trailer and the pavement. And it had those large rolls of paper,
Lovely.
right? So obviously, truck's not equipped to be unloaded from the side of the trailer. These are, I think, 10 or 15,000 pound rolls. This is not loaded to unload that way. And, they're trying to tell us how it should be billed for what rate. And I'm like, where are you getting the information from, right? More often than not, if you push back on them, like, they'll say, oh, well, I, have a friend that's a tow owner. Well, what company does he own? You know what I mean? Or, oh, well, we paid this much. Well, where was it at? Because it's all a game. You have to understand, like I said, I did that for a living. Every tow company I called was the most outrageous bill I'd ever seen, until I get off the phone with them, and 5 minutes later I call the next tow company, and it's the same thing all over again. And when you're in our situation, we represent a 100 tow companies, and we have people from California, to New Jersey, down to Florida, up in Oregon, and you see the bills, and I do not see a difference in billing. It might be the way they bill per pound, equipment charges, rotator rates might be, different here, but outside of like maybe Virginia and Wyoming, where their rates are a little bit higher, like I've seen some pretty, $2,500 for a rotator, stuff like that. For the most part, the rest of the 50 states, you're not going to see a difference. It's not going to be that noticeable.
So we have to get to a certain number somehow to remain
Right.
in business, right? You might have higher rates, higher hourly rates with no 4-hour minimums. You may have another guy down the road. He has lower rates, but he bills a minimum 4 hours on anything. I guarantee by the end of the day, both bills are going to come amazingly close to each other.
Exactly.
Right. Because we know what we need to end up with to pay the bills. And it's why it stinks that you're forced to, there's a certain state nearby Georgia, and state patrol keeps their rates ridiculously low. And that's why every time you see like a standard rollover, no big deal, like on a roundy round exit ramp, you see 12 rollbacks, 3 skid steers, 2 rotators, 5 heavy. It's like, okay, I get what they're having to do. And it sucks that they have to do that. But they
Yep.
have to get to the same number everybody else is. One last thing, you said something earlier and you just kind of kept on walking past it.
Okay.
And it's a concern of mine. Like 10, 15 years ago, we all figured out that these hazmat bills or motor fluid cleanup bills were being paid with a quickness, right?
Correct.
Very little argument. You suddenly saw a bunch of towing companies start up fluid cleanup companies under a different name and bill under a different name, because the mentality was, we know that can get paid. So at least if the tow bill doesn't get paid or we don't get the whole thing, at least now we've made some money to cover our subcontractors, our payroll, our fuel. So people started going in that direction. But now, and this isn't the first time today I've heard this, now they're starting to be kicked back over those bills and policy limits in regard to the motor fluid cleanup. And I don't know how that's possible. I mean, this stuff
So
needs to be cleaned up.
so this is an argument that has happened, probably only over the last 6 months. So unfortunately, I'm not going to have the smoking gun on this one. We're still kind of trying to fish our way through it. But yeah, so we're seeing caps. We've seen denials. So I think I had mentioned it briefly, like you said, on a hazmat cleanup, as long as there's an active policy, the liability policy, right? It should be paid. It doesn't matter if it was an uninsured driver. I think I referenced a raccoon. Like, it shouldn't matter who's in the vehicle. There's no argument. It's kind of like the difference between, if they wreck on the side of the road, it's a tow. But soon as that driver wrecks into somebody's yard or a farm, or where there's no argument to the fact that that's property damage, right? Now you have a whole different discussion with the insurance company, because they can't pull policy limits right off of the PD policy because you have property damage. Why they're allowed to argue that the side of the highway or on the highway where it's state owned isn't considered property damage, and you have states like California, and it goes back to the whole court thing where we have argued, but before you can ever get it to a judge to set precedents and write an opinion, they will settle it out. But California, has a vehicle code that clearly states that if Highway Patrol calls out a tow company or dispatches them to clean up a highway, that entire recovery is considered property damage to the state, because the tow company, to stay in rotation with the state, has to remediate that site to its original form, right? Which is kind of the definition of property damage. So the tow company has a responsibility to do that, and they can lose their lifeline as far as that's concerned from the state. But they have yet to ever get anything to go through court where they can set that standard moving forward, where the argument doesn't exist. So right now we're dealing with a few things, and it's cap limits, denials for uninsured drivers, and the other thing is we're starting to see where they'll pay for the hazmat but not the fuel pump of the tank, which to me makes no sense, right? Because then what do? Just break the tank open completely as a hazmat cleanup company and make that bill $30,000 more, or do you pay $1,200 for me to pump the fuel tanks out? I don't understand like where they're going or where they're trying to push it, but I look at it like the radar and the radar gun, right? And like you said, the state regulates everything, then the tow company's bringing every piece of equipment that they have on their yard because you're not doing the work for free. So it's the game of cat and mouse, and we're still kind of at the beginning stages of this battle with hazmat. And I think it goes back to what you were originally saying, right? The majority of hazmat cleanups are tow companies.
Yeah.
It's not a nationwide corporation. It's not, and insurance companies really have an issue with tow companies making money.
So I just realized that Georgia has a code that specifically says any record service called by law enforcement has to clean up all debris and fluids from that wreck. I never hear that used in an argument for payment.
I use it every day. And that's something that you guys really want to incorporate in almost every state. If you're a tow company, there's a regulation, because they can't have a tow company go out and clean an incident and leave half of a car on the side of the road and it creates another incident, or you leave it and there's 100 gallons of fuel you just left on the side of the road, it goes into a waterway. So every state has something in the vehicle code that's going to restrict the operations of the tow company. And in doing that, when you have guidelines, then that is a property damage situation to me. That's an environmental issue. It's a public safety matter, however you want to argue it. The state expects you to do that. They expect it to be remediated to its original form. And that is not a tow, that's a recovery. And that's another thing that I always hammer back. Like it doesn't always work to get paid. But soon as somebody says tow, I'm like, this was not a tow.
So
It was not a tow, it was a recovery.
we don't even, on a large recovery, we don't even mention the word tow. We don't
Nope.
we don't charge for a tow. There's no hookup and mileage. There's no we don't even bother, like the price of a 10-mile tow from the wreck scene down to our yard, that's pretty irrelevant as long as we're being paid properly for the recovery itself.
Right.
Which, we know the deal there. But, so, all right. Well, I appreciate you coming back on. And
Yes, sir.
I mean, who knows? this whole game seems to have changed quite a bit since you were last on. What, probably a year and a half to 2 years ago? Probably about 2 years ago at this point.
About 2 years ago.
And it's to me it sounds like a entirely different conversation.
Well, the thing I would like to say too before we go is I believe that the states have it both ways right now. And that's because they're dependent on the tow companies. But let's be honest, they haven't raised the requirements for insurance since the 1950s, or when, tow companies were with a horse and carriage going out and hooking up to another horse and carriage. Like, nothing is the same as it was when these requirements were set for what people need for insurance. And it's absolutely killing an entire industry because of the fact that you have, higher regulations. I mean, even go back to when these requirements were made, they weren't allowed to carry the same weight on a tractor trailer. They did, oversized loads, what that might be like one here and there. Right now, oversized loads are common, and the equipment that they're hauling is becoming bigger, which means the equipment that a tow company needs to use to recover that is that much larger. I mean, 110 ton, like every time I look, there's a new bigger rotator, and it's not because they're not in use, it's because the things that they're recovering are larger. And so it's a real disservice to the industry itself and the people that are doing the work for the states, that the state hasn't like kind of caught up to the times and said, all right, look, we need to revise what our expectations are for insurance policies, because and it's kind of like that even with personal vehicles, right? Uh, I mean, nobody gets into an accident with a personal vehicle where it covers everything that they created, unless you go knock your own mailbox down. If it's with another vehicle, somebody's getting burnt in the situation, and it really is because they're not requiring people to carry better insurance policies, ensuring that the people that are doing the work to keep the roadways cleared are getting paid on all the invoices. And then a lot of these different charges, like the admin fee, which I hear all the time. And that's because if I charge a 10% admin fee and I go 3 years and I haven't recovered a load, and I've put all those man hours, the people to dispatch them, ladies that are calling the insurance company, the third party that had to get involved because we hit a dead end a year and a half into it, it does not cover it.
Not even close.
You know what I mean? But they look at it like this absorbent charge, and how could you charge it? And it's at their own demise, because they continue to try to squeeze the profit margin out of an industry, and they're never going to be corporate owned. You have too many generations of families across the United States that have owned tow companies over and over and over again, and they're not going anywhere.
Well, why don't you share how to get a hold of you if anybody needs your services?
Okay, so once again, my name's Jamie Rhines. I work with Tucker Albin and Associates. My phone number there is 630-657-1188, extension 423. But I know tow owners don't like my extension, so my cell number, just going to throw it out there. I deal on my cell probably more than my office phone. That's 520-500-3047. And then you can also go to our webpage. It's tuckeralbin.com/towing/.
Sounds good. We might be calling you back again.
Yep, till we meet again.
All right, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys too. Thank you.
All right, take it easy.
All right, bye.